to meet you, sir. Thank you for coming. And you're from Mayor de Blasio's office, right?
Well, the city, yeah.
The city of New York, and you're here to speak about Vision Zero. And what about red light cameras in New York? Are they coming up?
I'll talk about that too.
Good. Here you go, Mr. Martinez.
Hello there, everybody. Thank you very much for the welcome and the invitation. Let me start by talking about Vision Zero, which is actually why I'm here, right? So, January 2014, coming up on 4 years ago, Mayor de Blasio, about 2 weeks into his term, stands with the family of Noshat Naim, right? He is a 8-year-old boy who was killed 3 weeks earlier, walking to school hand in hand with his sister. A truck making a left turn on Northern Boulevard hit him, struck him, crushed him underneath the back wheels. And he's standing with this boy's father. And he says, I started as mayor 2 weeks ago. This is a commitment I'm making. We are going to be a city that eliminates traffic deaths and serious injuries. Right? And I always start with that story, with that anecdote, because it shows a couple of things about Vision Zero. One is that Vision Zero has always been about that grief and personal loss that we're all familiar with, right? How many of us know somebody who was killed or seriously injured in a traffic crash? Right? Right? It's something that we all understand, and that's a sudden loss. It's a serious, it's difficult grief because you don't have time to prepare, right? It's a very human thing. And that's important for Vision Zero because humans understand that aspect of life, right? Whereas if we started talking about data and how, well, they do this in Europe and it's better, you don't connect with people in the same way that you do when you do something that they can relate with as humans. The victims' families have been a central part of Vision Zero. I'll tell you a couple stories about that as we go on. 2, I start with the story about him standing with Noshat, because from the beginning, Vision Zero has been Mayor de Blasio's initiative, right? DOT has cared about traffic safety forever. NYPD has cared about traffic safety, right? But when it's the mayor's initiative, when he's personally accountable, we began working together from the top down in a way that we never had before. And that integrity, and in addition, the Tax and Limousine Commission, the City Fleet, the Department of Health, Department of Education, all these mayoral agencies working together on this one problem more closely than ever before, we've gotten real results. And so, the mayor launched Vision Zero January 2014, and he said, in a month, I want a report. I want a report from Brett and Commissioner Trottenberg, and in a month he had that report. And the city listed 60 some odd initiatives that we were going to do to bring down traffic deaths. And the conclusion of the story is that the last nearly 4 years have been the safest 4 years in the city's history. Pedestrian deaths have hit record lows. We're doing something right. What we're doing is we're focusing on where people are being killed and seriously injured in the city and how they're being killed and seriously injured in the city, right? We're focusing on the hot spots. And so what we did, number one, we went and we pulled all the data and we looked to see where the crashes are occurring, and it's all the streets that you're familiar with, right? You would know them just by being in the city. Queens Boulevard, Atlantic Avenue, Flatbush Avenue, right? No Street, right? And it's actually a small fraction of the streets, less than 10% of our streets, more than half of the people who are killed and seriously injured, right? So from the DOT, that's good, because that means that we can focus on those streets and those intersections, and that's what we've been doing. If you've seen Queens Boulevard, you may not like the changes, right? We took away a lane of traffic on the service road, converted it to a bike lane. But the result of the work that we did on Queens Boulevard means it's much safer. Injuries have dropped by more than half. At the same time, bicycling is more than double, right? More than double the number of bicycles, because there were plenty of bicyclists on Queens Boulevard before, but now they're all much safer. And so it's that kind of work, and you've seen it all over the city. Pedestrian islands to give people a chance to break up their crossing, right? Taking away street space to make travel more predictable, right? There's nothing worse than when you're a driver and you're going along and a pedestrian comes from someplace that you didn't expect them. You never had a chance to see them, right? And that's something that we've been trying to correct all over the city by going to these hot spots, right? Slowing down the vehicles, right? So that's the geographic focus. Looking at the places where the data tells us we can make an improvement. Then there's the citywide focus. What are we doing everywhere? And it comes down to a few key behaviors, and I'm certain that you know what they are. Speeding, leading cause of fatal crashes in New York City. And that's because you don't have enough time to avoid a crash if you're going too fast, and then when you hit somebody, you're much more likely to kill them. Just the physics of it, you just do much more damage, right? And so we've been doing quite a bit on speeding. And then aggressive turns, failure to yield, right? And that is really straightforward. There's however many millions, probably more, turns taken every day. When that pedestrian is in the crosswalk, and you just take that quick turn, right? That impact will kill somebody, especially if they're a senior, right? Especially if they have other, they're just not as resilient. They're not able to bounce back as well. More than half of our pedestrian fatalities in the city are 60 years old or older, right? And it's those low-speed failure to yield crashes that are a real focus. So let's first go back to the speeding crashes. So, number one, lowering the speed limit in New York City, right? What's the speed limit in New York City? Right. And you guys are all experts, so that was a ridiculous question to ask in this room. But the month before we lowered the speed limit, if you asked a room full of New Yorkers what the speed limit was, nobody knew. Nobody knew. We did this. We took a poll, did a survey, and we got the result back showed that nobody had a concept that there was a speed limit in New York City. Right? Some people said 40, some people said 35, some people said 20. But changing the speed limit did two things. Number one, it slows everybody down, right? Not necessarily at your cruising speed, because when you're having trouble getting through traffic, it's because of other traffic, the signals, the double parked cars. But at that top speed, discouraging people from going 40 and instead encouraging them to go 35, right? So number one, lowering the speed limit. How did that happen? Well, earlier I was telling you about the family members. We would not have been able to get the speed limit lowered. We had to get state law changed. State law said New York City shall not have a speed limit lower than 30 miles an hour. Ordinarily, it takes 4, 5, 10 years to get a law changed in Albany. We got it done in under 3 months. Number one, because the mayor put a lot of commitment to it. But number two, because we went up there with family members who had lost loved ones. And they were the most powerful advocates for change that we could have. I could have showed up with briefing books and charts and tables, and it would not have made a lick of difference. But being able to stand across from somebody who lost their child completely changes the conversation. All of a sudden, you're willing to listen, because humans are not good at understanding numbers, but we understand grief, we understand emotion. We changed the speed limit in November 2014, even on the streets that were most accustomed to going the fastest. Again, Queens Boulevard, Flatbush Avenue. It's no surprise that these are the most dangerous streets, right? And again, and we also retimed the signals, especially during the off-peak, to discourage that speeding. Now, in many of these streets, during off-peak hours, you'll see that progression, where if you travel at 25 miles an hour, you'll just hit the greens. as opposed to speeding up to 40 and sitting at the light, speeding up to 40 and sitting at the light, right? But, and so we had this opportunity where we were changing the speed limit, and we seized it. I'm very proud of this. We seized it, we took out radio ads, we were in the papers every day, right? We took that poll in October of 2014, the month before we changed the speed limit, and we spent that month working. We handed out 1 million flyers in 8 different languages saying the speed limit is changing and this is why. And then we changed the speed limit, we changed the signs, we took the poll, and the number of drivers who know what the speed limit is now correctly has doubled, and it's stayed there. And I think that's because we've continued to push the message on the back of Unity meter receipts. You see the 25 miles an hour, right? We're doing a lot when it comes to the speed limit. And education about the speed limit. But the thing is, education isn't enough. Who here has gotten a speed camera ticket? You don't have to raise your hand, but if you know somebody who's gotten a speed camera ticket, very well, right? Why are we doing the speed camera tickets? Well, because we need to keep people from speeding. Speeding is the leading cause of fatal crashes in New York City, right? The way the speed camera program works, 11 miles over the posted speed limit, during school hours, in a school zone, you're getting hit with a $50 ticket. No points, no insurance. So if you're a driver, it's actually not that bad, right? You're putting gas in your car, you're paying your insurance. $50 is kind of a slap on the wrist. But what we find out is that once people get that first ticket, 80% don't get another one. They say, oh, I didn't realize that you were paying attention, and they stop speeding, right? The speed camera program has been essential in school zones that have speed cameras. Pedestrian injuries down 25%. All injuries down 15%. It's been an essential part of the initiative. Nassau County was going broke. They couldn't pay their cops' pension funds. They went to the governor and they went to Albany and they said, we're going broke. We can't pay our cops' pension funds. We want speed cameras. From the beginning, they had a call for speed cameras as a way to make money. They ran their program as a way to make money. What did they do differently than what we do? First of all, they didn't go, we have this limitation about school zones in our law. School zones are not the most dangerous place in New York City. Not by far, right? If we were concerned primarily about keeping people safe, we would put the speed cameras in high-speed, high-crash places. But by law, only if it's a school zone. So what did we do? We went for the most high-crash, high-speed school zones we could find. We worked within the law. Nassau County just went for the place that they could write the most tickets. What do? They wrote so many tickets that they had this uproar because people felt like it was unfair. And rightfully so. That's what happened to their speed camera program. They ran it for the wrong purpose, and they had to give it up within 3 months. They still have authorization, but they voluntarily relinquish it, right? The red light camera program, I'm not familiar with their amber timing, their yellow phase, but I've heard it from other jurisdictions that if you keep the yellow phase to short enough, more people will run red lights, you'll get more revenue, right?
Maybe I misunderstood. You're only having a speed program in New York City?
We have a red light camera program too.
Okay.
Here's the difference between what I've heard from other cities. Again, I'm not familiar with Nassau, but what I've heard other cities do. Our red light, our yellow light timing is the same all over the city, whether there's a camera there or not, right? Number one. Number two, it's pegged to the speed limit on that street. So if it's a 30 mile an hour speed limit or less, which is almost all of the city, it's a 3-second yellow phase. If it's 35 to 40, if it's 35, it's 3.5 seconds, and if it's 40, it's 4, right? We're not playing games tweaking the yellow phase in order to raise more money. If you enter the intersection less than a half second before the light changes, you won't get a ticket. So you can be there through the yellow, the light changes to yellow, and you're entering the intersection and you get through, you're not getting a ticket. The light changes to yellow as you enter the intersection, you're not getting a ticket. The light was steady red when you entered the intersection for more than half a second, you are getting a ticket. Because again, during the yellow light, you're supposed to slow down. And again, right angle crashes are one of the most fatal crashes that you can have inside a vehicle. Right? If you're getting killed inside a vehicle, it's because somebody was going too fast. Also, most likely, that right angle crash. Right? And what happens when we put up the red light cameras? Actually, throughout the city. We've had the program since '94. It's been a pilot experimental program since 1994. The number of people severely injured in right angle crashes, the T-bone crash, right, dropped by 3/4. Not only at the intersection that we have the camera, but throughout the city. And you know why? Because people expect the law to be enforced, right? Deterrence is one of the strongest tools we have in Vision Zero, right? Catching people is fine. Because if you catch that person, they may not do it again. They probably won't. But deterring everybody is much better. One of the biggest things that we've done in Vision Zero is NYPD has doubled the number of speeding tickets they've written and tripled the number of failure to yield tickets they've written, right? Speeding and failure to yield. And that's huge because all of those people are going to be driving safer. But the trick is, that's not where they stop, right? We've all heard about the initiatives that are coming, right? The story about Vision Zero and how about NYPD's cracking down on these offenses is actually probably more impactful than all the tickets that have been issued. Because again, you want people to be thinking twice when they're taking that turn. And just slow down the turn. How fast is a safe turn? A safe turn. Less than 5 miles an hour, right? But if you go out there and you watch, that's not what's happening. Or it's happening more now, but before Vision Zero, if you were trying to cross the street in New York City, you were familiar with the fact that that was the minority of turns. An example of the general deterrence, right? NYPD is doing. What is the most dangerous time of the day and season of the year to be a pedestrian in New York City? I'm here in the mornings. What else? Dusk. Give this man a prize. Dusk during the winter months especially, because during the winter months, the evening rush, when we're all walking home, when we're all walking to the supermarket, coincides with sunset. The number of pedestrians who are struck, particularly in turning crashes, doubles. Pedestrian serious injuries goes up 40% during these months. So what is the city doing? We have the NYPD out there, there'll be an announcement on this next week, out there during these hours writing more tickets. Why are they writing more tickets? Well, number one, you get those drivers to follow the law, but number two, we're telling everybody because we want them to follow the law. We don't want to catch people. We want them to stop speeding, we want them to not turn aggressively. And just final point on that, the overall number of violations NYPD's writing has not risen. What has happened is that the hazardous offenses have gone up, and all the other nuisance offenses, broken taillight, tinted windows, that's all dropped. The overall number is flat in the number of tickets that they're writing. We have a couple of questions. I'm sorry, let me start with you.
Yes. What about pedestrians?
What about pedestrians? Yes.
I saw something really good about my house. I don't know if it's experimental or not. That is really good that when the light change from going, let's say, north and south changes to red, the east and west stays red for a little bit.
You are wonderful. This is perfect. So, turning crashes, what are the key factors in protecting pedestrians in New York City? And one of the treatments that we've scaled up all over the city is what's called the leading pedestrian interval. If you haven't heard about it, that's all right, because it's invisible, right? Invisible unless you're paying very, very close attention. So at an ordinary intersection, what happens? I'm waiting to cross the street, the driver's right here, he's waiting to make a right turn, the light turns green, I get the walk, I walk out, he makes that turn, and he hits me, right? And that's generally a low-speed crash. If you're young and healthy, maybe you break a hip, maybe you break a bone, maybe you walk away. But if you're older, you hit your head, that's a fatal crash. So what have we done that's different? At a leading pedestrian interval, what happens? He has the red light, I get the walk signal 7 seconds before he gets the green. So now I have time to establish myself in the intersection, he has time to see me, I don't get hit. And I say he very deliberately because it's always a him. The point is, with the leading pedestrian interval, we used to do 10, 15 of those a year. Last year, we did nearly 800. We're blowing them out all over the city. If you have a second, you'll see them all over. In order to avoid T-bone crashes, the all-red interval, which we, I believe, invented in New York City. I think we did. I'm going to take credit for it anyway. But there's the 3-second all-red interval after the yellow, again, to prevent those crashes, even at intersections with red light cameras, which is the problem in other jurisdictions. Just one last point. Thank you so much for talking to everybody before they get behind the wheel. I still remember what my instructor told me about how it feels safe to be inside a car, right? This is the fundamental point I was getting at a second ago. It was taught to me by my driving instructor. What you do inside a car feels safe. It is hard to get hurt inside the car, but what you do with that car can be very unsafe. So thank you very much for imparting those lessons on everybody else.